All right, Dan, we're the Varsity Voices, and we are here with round 3 of the playoffs, quarterfinals.
Yep.
Yep. And it's our predictions episode, Prognosticus. I'm still having trouble saying that, even though I've said it for the whole year.
Even when you didn't mean to. It was the birth of the Prognosticus.
It was. And my prognosticus was, he was all business this week, Dan.
Mine too.
Really?
It started Monday. Yeah. Came by Monday and was like, here's my thoughts on these games. Now he went away for a little bit, came back today. And
he had a little business to take care of. Yeah.
And he's not your prognosticus. I'll be back.
Right. Yeah, mine was all business. He didn't want me to screw around at all this week. And, he weighed in big time. And he told me, he said, this is the important time of year, right? You get down to the quarterfinals, which is where we're at. And the teams who are left and all the teams who are left in are good. So
they are all good. Yep. And this is where you're getting close to, for some schools that have won, JCA, they don't hang a banner unless they win a state championship, and Mount Carmel and some of these others. But some of this is banner worthy, to be a quarterfinalist.
Yeah.
You're down to 8 teams and in each class. So it's pretty significant. It's something the players will remember forever. These guys will talk about it forever at every reunion. So kind of a big deal. It's cool that they have this experience. It is on their minds 24/7. I feel sorry for the teachers in their classes because they're
right.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think these are memories that they make that last a lifetime, right? Yeah. And I think about not only the games, but I think about some of the individual plays that some of the players are making in these games. There are things that they will remember and they will talk about for the next 40 years. Right?
And because of social media and how easy it is for video to be taken and that sort of thing, everyone's got a video camera on their phone now. Things like the Montini, 2-point conversion stop of Byron will live forever. That will live forever. And
yes.
It will be something that those guys have on. I'm sure they have it on their phones. They have it. They can talk about it in college. They can show photos of it, show video, and it'll always be a big deal to each other.
Yeah. So let's talk about that play real quick, Dan. The stop of Byron on the 2-point conversion by Montini. Really an outstanding play by Montini's defense. We know they're really good, and they've got stars and players all over that defense. But I still look at that and think Jackson Lane and Nick Costello, the play they made, Costello to take out the blocker, Jackson Lane to fill the hole and make that tackle was just outstanding play. And that's something that they will remember. I mean, they've got a lot of work to do still to get further, but that's the type of play, the type of game that they will remember for a lifetime, I think.
Well, Joe, and it's funny, we can talk about it because we're not coaches or players,
right?
However, they've got to not have thought about it officially, since let's see, Sunday at
right.
By the 24-hour rule, that was forgotten and it was on to Princeton, and So yeah, it was an outstanding play. I'll say it again. I think Byron went to the well one too many times with this little counter action that they had. I thought they might fake that counter and try and throw off of it.
Yeah.
But I thought, great play, memorable. Will live in the Montini lore forever.
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially if they go on to win a state championship, Dan.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, because we know how good Byron is. And it was a tough loss for them, but a great win for Montini. But that kind of leads us right into our first game, Dan, that we want to take a look at, and that's Montini and Princeton. So Montini, obviously, they beat Byron 14-13 in what many considered maybe a state championship game between two really good teams. Princeton, they won. They beat King 34-16. So they've had two kind of they've got a pretty good draw, Dan, in 3A as far as the playoffs are concerned. But you know what? They've taken care of business, right?
Yeah, you can only play whose schedule you have. I mean, so it's yeah, good for them. They're a good team. I think they probably would have been here, in a lot of different layouts of the bracket. I think it probably makes sense. And it's a chip on the shoulder game for Princeton. Montini eliminated them last year, so
right.
The big concern that we touched on, just a minute ago, is last week was such a dramatic victory, so much emotion. Can you crank it up again? And what I think is going to help Montini is that Princeton called them out post game.
Oh, they did. Yeah, I didn't see that. Yeah,
now it was by no means bulletin board material. They gave them respect. They said, great team, but that's who they wanted. They wanted to play Montini. They said it immediately after that game. It was like, bring on Montini. And it was the focus of one of the articles I read, so they were name dropped, and that's going to help Montini. You can create bulletin board material out of anything, right? So I could see that article being up in the locker room, and just something after that emotional victory against Byron to get them cranked up again.
Yeah,
they're human beings, right? So you have to find ways to try and get an edge. And it's not, Montini is not everyone's against us. No one thinks we can do it. That's not their mantra. So something like this, I think is good. Ultimately for Princeton, I think the outcome might be similar to last year. I still think Montini's very talented, can beat you a number of ways, and is absolutely stifling on defense.
When
you think about what they did to Byron's offense and what Byron was doing coming into that game, that is significant. And they have some mojo working in Lombard, and their defense is talented, aggressive, ferocious. I talked about, that being a quality that I see in these teams. Princeton scored 452 points this year, so no strangers to scoring. But Montini just held one of the highest scoring teams in the state. I've got to think that's up there with record for a number of points, or close to it. There's probably a million teams that have scored a ton of points, but the most points we've seen, and they just held them to 13.
Right.
So
I mean, they were averaging, Dan, close to 50 points a game. Byron. Yeah.
Yes. So 35, 38 points under their average. So yeah, Joe, I'll step out. I'm still.
I hear it. You're riding the Bronco,
still
aren't you?
riding the Bronco. Yep. I'm
riding the
Montini in this one. A 9 over a 4 seed.
Yeah. There's something about Montini's defense, which I think is not unique, but really they are on another level this year, I think. And unfortunately for Princeton, they've got a great running game. They've got running back Casey Etheridge, who's had an outstanding year. So he's rushed for over 1,600 yards this year. I think last year as a sophomore, he rushed for over 1,800 yards. He just picked up 217 yards and 3 touchdowns in their win over who was that? That was King, right?
King, yes.
Yeah. But unfortunately for Princeton I feel like that might be the one thing that they're going to go to or rely on. So we know how Montini plays defense, and they play it very well. And you can't tell me they're gonna not key on Casey Etheridge, right, and make Princeton maybe do some things that they aren't used to doing. But you know what? Princeton has put up over 50 points a game in their last, let's see, 4 games.
They can score.
They can score. But we saw what Montini's defense can do against Byron, and I think they're going to do that as well against Princeton. So I'm picking Montini as well in this game, Dan.
All right.
Oh, by the way, last week in our predictions, so I was 9-2, Dan.
Yeah.
You were 8-3. Just to put that out there.
By the way, yeah. Make sure I say this.
Just a by the way.
Just a data point that we throw out there.
Oh, wait. That's in bold on my sheet here. Yeah.
You're going to timestamp this on the social media?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. People, everybody listening, look for timestamps out there.
Yeah. After my Prognosticus was victorious over your Prognosticus
during the regular season,
I think yours was personally offended.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. He gets offended very easily.
Yes.
Yeah. He does. Yeah. So I try not to offend him, from week to week, but every week I seem to say something or do something that offends him. So
well, it's good that he was all business this week.
All business, yeah. All right, so there we go with the Montini-Princeton game. Let's move to the St. Laurence and DePaul game, Dan, and all CCL game here. St. Laurence coming off a win over Wheaton Academy, who was, I believe, 9-1. But St. Lawrence beats them 26-14. DePaul with a pretty easy win over Geneseo, 38-13. This is, I hate to see, I said this last week when we did our recap episode with regarding Marist and Loyola. I hate to see one of these teams have to go home, and that's the way I feel about this game. I feel like St. Lawrence, their defense is so good. They're still giving up less than 16 points a game, but on the other side, DePaul Prep is averaging over 31 points per game. So I'm not sure what gives here in this game, Dan, with these two teams. But I think it's going to be a battle.
Yeah. Joe, and in my notes for this game, I write down key players. So my key players for DePaul: Avery Bellis, Aiden Bissett, Gianni Gunta, Purple Division Defensive Player of the Year Michael Casper, and Braden Peavy. For St. Lawrence, Jacob Bailina, Brendan Carroll, Gary Coleman, Corey Cal Richardson. You know what all those players are?
All conference.
They're defensive players. They may all be all conference, but they are defensive players, because I think that is the defense is going to be what's critical in determining the outcome of this game. Both teams are dangerous, in the air and on the ground, and both teams have the ability to hit big plays, score fast, and they can grind it out. They both have strong running games. These teams, have to make the other team go the long way.
Yeah.
Whatever team does that will have the upper hand in this game. I'm going to say that it's keyed on defense, and I'm sure that it'll be a shootout. But I think this game is a toss up, and I'm taking DePaul Prep, at home.
All right.
So because it's a toss up, I think it'd be, I don't know, it seems like St. Lawrence is healthy again. That's a big deal. Their running game with Harley Riz and Corey Lass is outstanding. But I'm going to go with DePaul at home. I think this is what do I call it? Generational team for
generational. Yes. And having an outstanding year for sure. I've gone back and forth on this game, Dan. And and I still not sure who I want to pick in this game. But, I think what puts it over the top for me is because I do think both these teams are very, very close. I think what puts it over the top for me is DePaul Prep's offense. I think Juju Rodriguez, Braden Peavy, Nick Martinez, I think they're really potent weapons for DePaul. And I know St. Laurence has the same thing, but you just talked about all the players they have on defense. So I think if it comes down to it, it's going to come down to the offensive stars on DePaul Prep versus the defensive stars for St. Laurence. And, based on, I feel like DePaul Prep has really got some momentum going. And I think they're going to end up winning out in this game. But I do think it's going to be a close game too, Dan, but I pick DePaul Prep.
Yeah, Joe, on those notes that I make, I have a line where I pick, and I've changed it at least 3 times.
Got a big eraser, right?
Yes. My digital eraser. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to tell you, Dan. They have two.
You're going to go over our record again?
No. They have 2 common opponents this year in St. Patrick and Carmel.
Okay, let me hear. Oh, okay, yeah.
Now, they were wins for both teams, so I don't know. That doesn't help us at all. Right?
Not really. Probably.
But I just thought I'd bring it up.
Yes.
Yeah,
common opponents.
Anyway, I hate to see in the quarterfinals 2 CCL teams going up against one another, but that's the way it is.
Yeah,
so the winner of that game, Dan, will take on the winner of Coal City against Dixon, which is going to be a good game too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right, let's move on to 5A. And we've got St. Francis and Sycamore, Dan. All these games are Saturdays, no Friday games. Does that surprise you at all?
No, I think at some point they moved to all Saturdays. They don't give them a choice anymore. So, I think it doesn't surprise me too much. So, it's Saturday makes sense.
Yeah. All right, so St. Francis comes into this game with a 30-21 win over Prairie Ridge. Sycamore comes in undefeated, 11-0, number 1 seed, and they come off a 69-12 win over Westinghouse. So I think I said this earlier, but I have to say this about Sycamore as well. They got a pretty good draw in their first 2 playoff games. So I'm not sure how playoff tested they might be. That said, they've only given up an average of less than 12 points per game, Dan, over the course of their season. Just an outstanding year for Sycamore. They beat some teams who are really having some good playoff runs themselves in Rochelle and Morris. And, after looking at their season as well as what they've done in the playoffs, as far as how they've done with, scoring points as well as their defense, I'm not surprised to see that they're the number 1 seed in 5A.
Yeah, they are really good. Caden O'Donnell, linebacker, Cooper Bodie, linebacker. They've got their stud is Burke Goucher, quarterback. I think he's going to Iowa. I think he's also an Iowa commit.
Oh, him and Ryan Fitzgerald.
Yeah. And, they seem to be one of those teams early on, Joe, that needed a minute to get going with some close games early. But, wow, have they hit their stride. They had 1 game against Oswego East where they didn't score over 20 points, and their last 4 have been absolute blowouts.
Yeah.
Big win against Rochelle seemed to, kind of catapult them into another level. The Goucher to Aiden Wizard features, that combination is 2 D1 players, and it's pretty lethal. So they can beat several ways. They play very good defense against both the run and the pass. But St. Francis can beat you in a lot of ways, including what I think is going to be the difference in this game: Brady Palmer with his legs.
All
And
right.
they have tremendous team speed with Zach Washington, Tanner Glock, and a feisty defense that makes plays when they need to. I might be, I'm going to be called CCL Dan here, but I'm going with St. Francis in this one. I think it's going to be
You
really
are.
close.
Okay.
Yes. And
Yeah.
playing at Sycamore, like Rochelle, will be an added challenge. And take that for whatever it's worth.
It will be.
So they better be buttoned up and disciplined.
Are they west of 39, Dan?
I don't know if they are. They might be.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but I don't think it matters because, when I watch a little bit of Sycamore's offense, and they are pretty balanced. They can run the ball, they can throw the ball. Like you mentioned, they've got some D1 players, on offense and maybe one or two on defense as well. And after I watched them, I thought, I can see why they're the number one seeded team in 5A. You know how skeptical I am of seeds?
Yes.
Yes. But with Sycamore, I am not.
They've earned it.
They've earned it for sure.
And Joe, they're not even close to 39. They're like by DeKalb.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I knew that.
You knew that.
It's not far. Yeah.
Yeah, you're Mr. Geography. You know that stuff. Right. Yeah. Yeah. But, and I like St. Francis too. I do think St. Francis has a little bit, has been up and down this year over the course of the regular season. They've had some really good wins, couple of tough losses, but unfortunately, Dan, I think I have to go against you and the CCL this week, and I'm going to pick Sycamore in this one.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable at all. And it's funny, we both think that St. Francis has been up and down. Joe, they've won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a row. They did lose 2 in a row, which I think is what's clouding our judgment on that. But I mean, I picked St. Francis, but I would say the same thing, but I think, every team needs a game to kind of get them going. And the Naz game came at the right time for them. Big, huge win.
Huge win.
Game of the season.
Yes. Huge win.
It's one of those games that propels you. So that's part of the reason why I'm picking St. Francis.
Okay. Yeah, and the winner of this game, Dan, takes on the winner of Rochelle and Nazareth, which is the next game we're going to talk about.
Good segue.
Good segue, right? So Naz 42-20 over Woodstock North last week. Rochelle with another convincing win over a Chicago Catholic League team in Bennett, 38-6. So this is probably one of the games that I want to see the most, Dan, and I'm actually thinking about going to this game.
Nice.
Yeah. I know it's at Rochelle.
I've heard from the Bennett coaches that it's a really cool place. So
yeah, it's going to be at Rochelle right on Saturday. So I may head out there for this game. But I think Rochelle, even though they've been very successful over the last couple of weeks against some of the Chicago Catholic League teams, they have not seen a team like Nazareth. Who's as balanced as they are, which is with as much talent as they have on both sides of the ball. So I think this is going to be a much different test for Rochelle than they've had over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, they, if you do comparative scores and you see how Naz, crushed Bennett and then that score there, you think, well, maybe there's some, but I don't know. I don't know if that means anything, but it's no walkover for Nazareth by any stretch.
Right.
Rochelle plays fast. They block very hard. They are very good at home, where they have that stadium and field tailored for their offense. Nazareth is going to present quite a challenge for them, but Rochelle's lone loss to Sycamore could be a blueprint for what Naz can do. And the responsibility of this game is going to come down to the Nazareth front seven. And how well they do defeating blocks and tackling. Rochelle's Dylan Manning, Joe, I've watched a few of their games now. He's a sophomore. I think he's the best sophomore I've seen.
Really?
I mean,
yeah.
regardless of position, this kid is a great football player on both sides of the ball. And he's going to be a player to watch not only this year, but for the next 2 years. All that being said, my pick is for Nazareth. I think because of what they can do in the passing game, I think their front seven is up to the task. Gabe Kaminsky and they and crew will be very difficult for Rochelle. But that being said, Rochelle can throw the ball. They threw the ball a lot against Sycamore and threw it effectively. The quarterback is very accurate, throws on the run really well. I think Nazareth, a good game to kind of get a gauge off this is Naz's game against JCA.
Yeah.
Where Naz won 16-13. We're able to hold that offense down, with a huge offensive line and huge backs. So I think that's what I'm using as my barometer. So that's why I'm going with Naz in this game.
Okay. Yeah, and I think Rochelle may be a bit susceptible to the pass, and we know how well Nazareth does that with, their quarterback, Logan Malachek. They've got weapons at the wide receiver, and Penley and Sestone and Walker. I think that's going to be the difference in this game, Dan. I do think that Rochelle is going to be able to move the ball a bit and run it, but I think the explosive nature of Nazareth and with some of their talent on the edges and the wide receivers as well as the running backs, I think it's going to be too much for Rochelle, something that Rochelle has not seen all year. And I think Nazareth wins this game as well.
Okay.
All right.
We're in agreement. All right.
So Naz, and now we go to the other 5A game, which is Joliet Catholic and Peoria. Dan.
Yeah.
So Peoria, they won their game last week against Thornton Fractional North, 52-18. JCA, which maybe was one of the bigger surprises for me, last week was they won their game over Sacred Heart Griffin 49-0. I mean, just completely dismantled them, right? And it's kind of strength against strength here, I think, in this game. So Peoria, they've averaged over 49 points per game. We know how good Joliet Catholic's defense is. We know what Joliet Catholic wants to do on the offensive side of the ball. They just want to control it, and they want to run it with their good running backs, Larry Stringham, Nate McGreeny, as well as some others. So I think for Peoria, and I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but I don't think Peoria has seen a team like Joliet Catholic yet this year.
No, and they, as you mentioned, they come in with a monster offense and they're giving everyone fits, and 49 points a game is nothing to sneeze at. They do have the chip on their shoulder advantage as JCA eliminated them last year in the playoffs. I'll say the same thing I said about an earlier game, I think the Montini game, but unfortunately, I think it happens again this year because, Joe, did you watch the Sacred Heart Griffin game?
I did watch a little bit of it, Dan.
They smashed them. They were like they looked like cartoon characters smashing like the Bugs Bunny team in, I know it's baseball, but that's what they looked like. It was like something out of Space Jam. They just looked like monsters, and they're so damn big and strong, and Peoria has given up 24 points a game. So Joliet Catholic has an opportunity to stick to their game plan, hold the ball, grind the clock, keeping that Peoria offense on the sideline. And then their defense has been outstanding. Their safeties are awesome. They will make sure that every completion that Peoria has is tackled ferociously.
Right.
It's I think Joliet Catholic's on a collision course with the state finals. And so my pick is for JCA.
Okay. Yeah. I'm with you on this, Dan. I think JCA just does way too much for Peoria to handle. I do think Peoria is going to be able to score some points, but, we know what JCA likes to do on the offensive side of the ball, and that is just, march the ball down the field, chew up time on the clock, and, then at the end of the fourth quarter, you look up and you're down by 2 touchdowns and the game is over. And I think that's what's going to happen here too. So I pick Joliet Catholic as well.
Okay.
All right, let's move to 7A, Dan. And the first game is Quincy and St. Rita. So when I looked at this game, Dan, I thought Quincy has, completely dominated every opponent this year that they've faced.
Yeah.
They're 11-0. They've scored 40 or more points per game in all their games. They blew past Moline last week, 44-14. They've got some of the top players in the state on offense. They've got Jarius Rice, wide receiver / running back, who's really explosive, right? Their quarterback, Braden Little, last week he threw for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, completing almost 80% of his passes. He's got 47 touchdown passes this year, Dan.
Wow.
Yes. Unreal. I think their offense is, for 7A, I think it's unmatched in the state of Illinois. So I think, when you look at what they are able to do on offense, and, they don't make any, they're not trying to fool you all that much. They are going to throw the ball, and they're going to throw it a lot. Yeah, they've got some people who can run the ball as well, but Quincy wants to throw the ball, and they've shown that over the course of the regular season and the first 2 playoff games. They're averaging over 330 yards passing, and not only during the year, but during the first 2 playoff games as well. So St. Rita has got their hands full with Quincy.
Yeah, you mentioned it, 11-0 and 11 blowouts. They're prolific offensively. They return a bunch of talent, too, from last year's quarterfinalist team. Big play machine, size, speed, and talent. However, that being said, they have not seen anything like the St. Rita defense.
Right. I agree with that. Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see this matchup. I will do the common opponent thing. I'm going to kind of pull a thread.
Okay. Do it. I want to hear it.
One of their closer games, closer being in quotes, was against Moline, which they beat to a similar score as Bennett beat Moline. So that might tell you something about where they're at. Joe, in this game, I think location, the home field advantage is going to be a big deal.
Okay.
So this game's at St. Rita.
Yeah.
I think it'll be the first time this season that Quincy will face some adversity on offense, and the first time they've been frustrated this year. I'm not saying they're not going to score and they're not going to even have a super low point total. But because of those factors, I do think St. Rita comes away. Maybe I am picking an upset. It's a 10 against a 2. But so I'm going to be CCL Dan. I'm picking St. Rita in a close one.
Yeah, and I can't argue with you on that, Dan, because I've seen St. Rita. We watch them over the course of the year. They played really well. Obviously, their defense is really good. They've got a couple of Dog Pound members, as well as a Zuko's Dog of the Week winner in who was it? Justin Buckner, right? So I don't think Quincy's going to have seen a defense like St. Rita's. But I also feel the other way. I don't think St. Rita's going to have seen an offense like Quincy. So, to me, it's which one of those kind of wins out in the end. And, I love St. Rita and what they've done this year, and throughout the course of the regular season, how they've done in the playoffs as well. I do think they maybe try and control the ball on offense, keep with Nick Herman, the running back, who's excellent, by the way. Try and keep Quincy's offense off the field, but I do think Quincy and their explosiveness and the way they are on offense and their big playability, I think it might be a little bit too much for Rita in this game. So I'm going to go with Quincy in this, Dan.
All right. Yeah, I'm looking at some scores here. So St. Rita lost to Mount Carmel 28-0. They lost to Naz 45-21. So they are susceptible to these types of offenses. It's not like they've dominated everyone defensively. So it wouldn't be too unusual, but I think because the frustration factor that they can impose for a little bit on Quincy might make a difference, and I think they can hold the ball with Nick Herman.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Another great game, right? We'll follow. We'll let people know what happens. So the next 7A game is Normal and Mount Carmel. And this is Saturday at 5 p.m. Oh, wait. For the previous game, Dan, the winner will take on the winner of Mount Carmel and Normal. So whoever wins that Quincy St. Rita game is going to take on the winner of Mount Carmel and Normal.
Okay.
Mount Carmel, they beat St. Charles North last week, 48-15. Again, a outstanding effort by Jack Elliott. Both running and throwing the ball. I think he ran for over 66 yards, 2 touchdowns, passed the ball for over 140 yards and 3 touchdowns. And, it's Jack Elliott that we saw early on in the year. Then he had a little bit of an injury, came back, and it looks like now he's 100%. Daniel Taylor also had a big game for Mount Carmel, over 120 yards rushing. Some of the familiar names, Dan, for Mount Carmel. Quentin Burrell, he had 5 catches for 73 yards and a touchdown. Interesting thing in this game is Normal has been another dominant team from, if you want to say downstate, we can say downstate.
Typical suburbanites.
Yes.
Anything south of I-80 is downstate.
Anything south of I-80. Yeah, they've averaged over 46 points a game. And, Dan, they've only given up 15 points per game this year. So this is going to be an interesting game. I think more so for Normal than it is for Mount Carmel. We know what Mount Carmel likes to do and will do to most of the teams they face, but I think Normal, this is going to be the biggest challenge for them all year.
Yeah, it's a great matchup between two great offenses. Normal out of the Big 12 conference they've one loss. So they lost to Kankakee, who we saw give Naz a great game in week 1. And so, so that kind of tells you the level of competition. They it's not like they're not used to this or they haven't seen anyone. They lost 26-13.
Dan, can I give you my 2 degrees of separation on common opponents on this?
Yes.
All right. So common opponent, like you just mentioned, Kankakee. So Normal's only loss was to Kankakee, 26-13. Kankakee lost to Nazareth, 37-30 this year, but Naz lost to Mount Carmel, 56-33. How's that?
Wow, that is quite a thread. And with Zuko in the background,
yes,
giving us his opinion.
Yes, he's got to weigh in for sure. Yeah.
He's like, hey, did you guys mention a dog? But it's funny because I think that Mount Carmel is probably the favorite, right?
Yeah.
In everyone's eyes, but Cal Beatty's really tough, though. The Normal quarterback throws on the run very well, hitting receivers in stride, throwing at different angles. They gave up 49 to Prospect. and which was by far the most they've given up. And I think for them to win it would be considered an upset.
Yeah.
And while Mount Carmel is the lower seed, like I said, they are the favorite in most people's eyes. I go with the favorite at home, so I'm going with Mount Carmel.
Yeah, I'm going with the favorite too, Dan. And you just mentioned it's at home, meaning at Mount Carmel, which I think is going to make a difference here. And I'm going to go with Mount Carmel as well on this game. All right. So we're on to our last game, and it's Maine South and Loyola. This is at Loyola on Saturday. Wait. I keep doing this. I'm sorry. So the normal Mount Carmel, we talked about this. So winner's going to take on Quincy, the winner of Quincy and St. Rita. All right, we'll move on. Yeah. All right, so Loyola coming off a win in a really good and tough matchup in the Chicago Catholic League over Marist, 24-20. I think I mentioned in our recap episode, I hated to see one of those teams have to bow out or go home in the playoffs, because I do think Loyola and Marist in 8A are probably two of the top 3 to 5 teams in 8A.
Yeah.
Maine South, they come in this off a big win against West Aurora, 41-6. So it's kind of hard for me to figure out or to make something of this game, Dan, other than what I know about Loyola and how good they are. What do you think about Maine South and where they're at?
Scoring a ton of points, led by Jamison Purcell at quarterback. I think he may have taken over at some point. He might be a sophomore, and I think he is. But anyway, a really good one. Another excellent sophomore quarterback and a very good offensive line. They've got Zach Stoyloff, great offensive lineman name. But they pass protect very well. They love to throw the ball to just a trio of great receivers led by Joey Naughton and Jacob Vittel, and they utilize their running back Michael DeLumo very well in both running the ball and a really great screen game. So, Loyola's just rolling with the stars we've talked about all year. Fitzgerald, McPherson, Loftus, on offense, and Ghislandi, Robinson, Maher on defense. But Maine South is the type of team that gave Loyola fits early on in this year. So in East St. Louis and St. Francis, very similar, I feel like, to St. Francis, Maine South. They scored a lot of points, but they've also given up a lot of points, which seems to be their MO.
Mm-hmm.
I think that catches up with them this week because Loyola can be both explosive and control the football. So I think that's the key in the game. We see how if Loyola can chew the clock up a little bit and have a great advantage in time of possession. So I think that's going to be the key. I think they're going to be able to do that. So my pick is for Loyola.
All right. Yeah. And, when I was looking at some of the Maine South details or information, over the course of their season, their only losses have come against some really good teams. So they lost to Lincoln Way East, who, no shame in that, lost to Hersey, who had a really good team this year, and Barrington, another really good team. But one of the other things that I looked at, Dan, was they dominated against Warren. They beat them 35-18, and Warren is still, maybe the favorites in their class in the playoffs right now. So, I'm really interested to see which Maine South team shows up this Saturday against Loyola. But I do feel that no matter which team shows up, we've seen what Loyola can do when they're completely healthy, and they're completely healthy right now with Ryan Fitzgerald and Drew McPherson on offense, and on defense. We've seen, They've given up some points, but, they're kind of a bend but don't break type defense. And I think, this game is at Loyola on Saturday. I think that has a little bit of bearing on this as well. So I'm picking Loyola too in this game, Dan.
Okay.
All right. So I think over the course of our games, we only differed once. Does that sound? Oh, no, twice.
No, twice. Quincy, you're taking Quincy.
I'm taking Quincy. You're taking Rita.
Against the CCL.
And I'm taking Sycamore.
Yeah.
You're taking St. Francis, which I know I'm going to hear about that. Dan.
Yeah, there is but there's no shame. You're not going out on a huge limb for either of those picks. Yeah, so no one can be too upset.
No, nobody will be too upset, right? But what it will do is make everybody interested in watching, listening, whatever they're going to do as far as the games this weekend, right? Because
they're great.
There's going to be really good games.
Joe, do you know? I'm putting you on the spot.
All right, here we go.
Do you know if any of these games are broadcast on any sort of network? I'm thinking of.
I have not seen Marquee Network, Dan, mentioned as far as some of these games, but I know they will be, and we've talked about this, they'll be on either NFHS, Huddle, or YouTube. Yeah, and maybe Marquee, but I haven't seen that mentioned anywhere.
Yeah, you could make a case that maybe St. Lawrence, DePaul, two Chicago teams would make sense on Marquee or the new Chicago Sports Network.
Yeah, I don't think they got their S together yet, Dan.
You know what they need? They need a local podcast.
They do. They need a Varsity Voices podcast on their network.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how good we'd be with like a production staff?
Yeah. Other than you and me.
Right. Yes. Yes. In our marketing department.
In our marketing department, we bring a lot to the table. So we'll let them know that.
Yeah. Someone should pick us up. I think there should be a bidding war.
All right, here we go.
Between Marquee and Chicago Sports Network.
A bidding war?
Bidding war.
Yes.
Get between those pockets.
Yeah, between Marquee, Chicago Sports Network, the new one. For people who don't know, there's a new network out there for the Bulls, Sox, and Hawks.
Right.
And Varsity Voices.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, and if you get an antenna and you stand on your roof and you get on your tiptoes,
you wrap it in tinfoil
and you balance it on your index finger, you can pick us up for free.
Yeah, that might be why. All right, I'm not going to say anything more.
Right, we don't want to poison the well, Joe.
No, we don't. But I think our content, Dan, would be perfect on any of those networks in Chicago.
The only thing that they would do to us, Joe.
What?
They would keep us snappy.
So we couldn't. Some maybe
of this banter, this repartee we have.
Yes,
that might get cut on the production floor. Stick to business and put the line down.
Yeah, put the wine down, right. All right, Dan, I want to ask you something else.
Okay.
And you can let our listeners know. I'm putting you on the spot. So we've been covering the Chicago Catholic League. We've been covering all the regular season games and the playoff games. That ends in a couple weeks, right? But we don't end. Right? We continue to go on, never, ever, ever. Yes. So for those of you who love listening to us, and we know it's everybody out there who's listening to us, tell them what, some of the things we're talking about doing, Dan, for, after this football season is over, because we're still going to be here.
Yeah, there's a lot we can talk about. We've kicked around a bunch of topics that we think people will have an interest in. We can get a little more serious. We can dive into some of the things that we've joked about as far as IHSA playoffs and how the playoffs are set. We can talk about some of the futures players, that we've talked a little bit about. I talked about a sophomore on Rochelle tonight, but there's plenty of freshmen and sophomores to go a little bit more in depth on and look at. We can talk about, we wanted to talk about, some of the transfers that we've seen, and we want to see if that what's happening in college football with the transfer portal is going to, it's already started to, but to see just what's involved in the transfer process in high school football and how that affects the CCL. We want to talk recruiting.
Recruiting for
players,
sure.
When they or who they're committed to, who they've signed with, who they're signing with, the dates have changed since back in the day. So we'll get into that a little bit.
What about NIL stuff, Dan, at the high school level?
NIL at the high school level.
It's happening. It's going to happen. Yes. You're not going to stop it.
Yeah, I know. There's some, and so the positives and downside of NIL and how that might affect the Catholic League. So we've got a bunch of topics. We might cut back maybe to once a week. In the off season, but we are looking for topics too. So if people have ideas out there, I'd like to get a ref on. I'd like to get a reporter or two on.
Yeah. You want to get somebody from the. You want to get somebody from the IHSA on?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, there's a lot of things we can talk about with the IHSA and refs. And refs too.
Yeah. All these schools will have their entrance exams / placement exam. We can talk about, that and any sort of, we talked a ton about numbers, Joe, in the summer. And, this is where the numbers come from. So there's
still a struggle for some schools out there.
That I don't know if anyone will give us their numbers, as far officially. We might have to do some unofficial reporting there, but it might just be some guesswork. But numbers, that's if it's a topic for the football program. I've always told people, the football program is the most important program, and it's not just because it's my favorite. Someone once told me this. Football is the most important because it touches the most students out of any program.
Yeah.
So when you think about the band involvement and the number of players on each level, and everyone that has to get involved with the football program, the cheerleaders, the dance squad, there's a lot of different things. So anyway, back to, those testing numbers become important. Easy, pal.
Yeah, there he is.
Yeah, maybe
Zuko.
some off-season dogs. So, easy.
Right. We'll have to hear from the coaches as far as who's working out in the weight room, Dan, and we may have to give some Zuko's dog of the week to some weight room warriors, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a great idea. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. Did you just come up with that?
I did. You know me. I'm all about ideas.
Big idea guy. Yes. I love it. I love that. Yeah. Dog of the week, weight room.
Weight room guy. Right. Yes.
Dog chewing on the bench pad.
Right. Exactly.
Popping the yoga balls.
Yeah. So all that said, Dan, what we want to make sure our listeners know is that we are going to be here. We're going to be here for you throughout the off season, after the playoffs. We'll be talking about a lot of topics. So, don't think that we're going away. We're going to be here every week with all sorts of different types of topics that I think you'll all be interested in. So,
yes, and those people that listen, and because their kids are playing, and maybe their kids have graduated. They can weigh in. They can still find us, get this interesting topics, reach out for comments. I love the people that have reached out to me and told us how much they love our podcast, the coaches that appreciate it. So we've loved it. We have a few more weeks to talk about this stuff and do more Prognosticus. And so we think we'll have CCL teams in the state championships. So we'll go all the way.
Yeah. We haven't heard you suck nearly as much as we thought we would.
No.
Yeah.
No.
But there's some out there. who
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think,
yeah. Mostly from our alma mater.
right? It's like, what is wrong with you guys? Yeah.
I wouldn't expect anything different. So
No, I wouldn't either.
that's the
Yeah.
glory and the benefit of teammates over the years.
Yes, but all in all, Dan, you and I have enjoyed doing this, and we're going to, as I mentioned, we're going to continue doing it. So make sure you stay with us, hang with us, like, subscribe, and follow us. Tell your friends to do the same thing, because I think as we go forward, there's going to be a lot more stuff that you're going to be very interested in hearing. And
a lot of things in the hopper.
A lot of things in the hopper, and Dan and I are going to cover them. So, yeah, thanks again for listening. And we will be, let's see, we will have our recap episode coming up, after this weekend's games, playoff games.
Yep.
So make sure you tune in for that. But most of all, thanks for listening, and we will look forward to talking with you soon.
Click.